Let's take a second to talk about grief. No, not that kind of grief. Proper grief. As humans, grief is something that we're all going to experience one way or another. Nothing lasts forever. No one lives forever. Eventually, everyone and everything you love will die, thus illuminating the wretched road that is the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. GRIS is a game that perfectly exhibits what the 5 stages of grief looks like through color, music, and symbolism. Developed by Nosmata Studio and published by Devolver Digital, this game was released in 2018, where you play as a girl named Gris whose whole world crumbles after she's thrust into the 5 stages of grief upon suffering a great loss. It's an adventure platform game, and though there are a variety of different puzzles and somewhat challenging platforming setups, each of these mechanics are incorporated in tandem with the symbolic nature of what Gris is going through. Each skill that Gris picks up synergistically correlates with her growth, reminiscent of how far she's progressed in overcoming her grief. She wears this big dress that allows her to maneuver in the water like a stingray, or break through the rubble like a wrecking ball. It's clever, it's creative, and that's enough about the mechanics. Let's talk about the color. In our review of The Wolf Among Us, we talked about how the addition of harsher colors add to the mystique and wonder of Fabletown. The colors in Gris, while also enhancing the environment, are reflective of each stage of grief. When you start the game, it feels barren and empty. But as you continue through the game, solid colors slowly start to fill the environment, before eventually mixing in with one another. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression. Each of these stages are represented by their respective colors, shaping the environment symbolically and showcasing how Gris uses her emotions to process her grief until finally reaching the stage of acceptance. But the game isn't purely cut and dry, so to simply guide the player through this 5 stages of grief, it uses symbolism to expand upon the effect that each stage has on Gris. Anger is not as simple as being angry. Depression isn't one steady climb. Bargaining really isn't all that complex once you understand it. And it's in these included pitfalls and setbacks that Gris is able to portray grief in a beautifully accurate way. It acknowledges that the other stages, rather than each being a set hurdle that you have to overcome, are really just a process that your emotions undergo, shifting to adapt to newfound loss. You don't achieve true acceptance instantly after suffering a great loss, and Gris knows this. One example of symbolism within this game that stands out, just to give you a small idea of how much symbolism is actually prevalent through Gris, is the red turtle. The turtle, though red to represent anger, is surrounded by the blue water, representative of depression. It's a representation of the catalyst which drives Gris to escape the depression she's currently submerged in. It guides Gris to achieve those small droplets of acceptance, pushing down her dark thoughts so she can get used to that newfound reprieve before reaching a complete level of acceptance. And this is just one example of the many facets of symbolism that Gris contains. The game does have some optional challenges that have you collecting what they call mementos. We won't spoil anything, but do know that collecting all of them will probably make you cry. Grief is such an unfair process that we all have to go through. The idea that every single one of us will inevitably have to climb over this accursed mountain of adversity can be existentially dreadful. But Gris doesn't encourage a wounded spirit. In fact, the game, rather than promoting the idea of getting over your grief, demonstrates that you should use it to grow. It highlights that grief is something that will forever change you and strip you down to nothing. But when you finally build yourself back up, having undergone the process that is the 5 stages of grief, you will have a deeper, fundamental understanding for the world around you.